The stars blinked coldly against the dark expanse of space, indifferent to the cataclysmic events unfolding far beneath them. In the void, the colossal Indarax moved like a shadow across the galaxy, a warship of the Galathar Dominion, an empire whose ruthless expansion had been marked by the systematic erasure of entire civilizations. For centuries, the Dominion had swept across the galaxy, snuffing out histories, identities, and memories of countless species. But today, their targets were different. Today, they sought to erase the last remnants of Earth. Humanity's homeworld, once a thriving cradle of civilization, had been reduced to a broken wasteland after the rise of the Dominion. Generations had passed since the last human left the planet, but the echoes of their existence remained. The Dominion believed they had successfully wiped away every trace of human culture, every record, every artifact. They believed that Earth was a relic, a forgotten place whose memory would never resurface. They were wrong. As the Indarax descended toward Earth, its weapons primed to obliterate whatever remnants of human history still existed on the planet, something far more powerful than any weapon in their arsenal was stirring deep beneath the planet's surface. In the heart of a long-forgotten vault buried under layers of rock and time, an ancient artifact of unimaginable significance began to awaken. This was no ordinary relic. This was a human legacy preserved from a time long before the Dominion ever rose to power. The vault had been sealed away by the last remnants of humanity, hidden from all but the most ancient of records. It was designed to protect what little remained of the human race, to safeguard their legacy against the inevitable tide of galactic conquest. It was built to be undetectable, concealed from even the most advanced scanning technology, lying dormant for millennia. Yet now as the Indarax made its approach, the artifact stirred. A pulse of energy, subtle but undeniable, radiated outward from the vault, an ancient signal that rippled through the fabric of space. It was a call, a beacon, and it would not be ignored. Inside the vault, the artifact, an intricate fusion of technology and organic matter, came to life. Its surface, once cold and inert, now hummed with an otherworldly power. The artifact wasn't just a relic. It was a key to something far greater, a secret weapon, left behind by humanity at the peak of their civilization, a weapon of pure human will and ingenuity, capable of disrupting the very fabric of reality itself. Its activation sent shockwaves through the nearby star systems, a wave of energy that would soon reach every corner of the galaxy. On board the Indarax, the crew remained oblivious to the awakening below. They had their orders. The planet was to be sterilized, every trace of humanity eradicated. The Dominion had long since claimed Earth as their victory, a symbol of their power and dominance. But as they moved closer to their target, the faintest ripple in their scans caught the attention of their lead officer, Captain Vathos, a hardened warrior who had seen countless worlds fall before the Dominion's might. His eyes narrowed as he peered at the sensor readings on his console. "What's this?" he muttered under his breath. There was something faint, almost imperceptible, at the edge of their sensor range. It wasn't a natural occurrence, nor was it anything the Dominion had encountered before. A signal, perhaps? But from where? Vathos wasn't one to second-guess orders, but there was an unsettling sensation gnawing at him. He turned to his tactical officer, Lieutenant Rin, who was already scanning the data. "Are we sure about the readings? Could it be a glitch?" Rin's brow furrowed as she manipulated the controls. "It's not a glitch, Captain. I'm getting a strange resonance. It's almost like an ancient signal, but—" She hesitated, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "There's no way it could be coming from Earth. The planet's been dead for centuries." Vathos stared at the data for a moment longer, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. His orders were clear, but there was something about this that didn't sit right. With a quick motion, he dismissed the data and turned toward the planet. "Continue with the plan. Earth will burn as ordered. We'll deal with whatever this is later." But deep below the planet's surface, the pulse from the artifact had only just begun. It was a message, a signal to any who would listen, and it would not go unnoticed for long. This relic was not just a key to a forgotten past. It was the manifestation of a human will that had been buried for centuries. Humanity long believed. To be lost was not gone. They had left behind a legacy, a final gift to the future, a legacy that was about to rise from the ashes of their destruction. The Indarax moved closer, its massive cannons primed to erase all remnants of human history. But the awakening of this ancient relic signified the beginning of something much more dangerous than any ship or weapon. The story of humanity had never truly ended. It had merely been waiting for the moment when the galaxy would need to remember what it had tried so hard to forget. Every great journey starts with a few brave explorers. Right now, Galactic War Stories is just beginning, and your support means everything. If you love epic sci-fi battles, deep space mysteries, and the untold stories of the cosmos, hit subscribe. It's free and it helps us grow this universe together. As the Indarax neared its target, the silence of space seemed to grow more oppressive, the weight of unseen forces gathering like a storm on the horizon. But as the ship's weapons aligned for their final strike, the galaxy had already begun to change. Humanity's legacy, long buried, was rising once again, and the fate of the Dominion and the entire galaxy was about to be rewritten. The surface of Earth, a wasteland of craters and scorched earth, lay beneath the vast shadow of the Indarax. Once this planet had been the birthplace of countless nations, a cradle of innovation and culture, humanity's home. Now it was little more than a graveyard, forgotten by the galaxy. And yet, deep within its crust, something was stirring. A silent promise that had been waiting for centuries. Inside the ancient vault, the relic pulsed with increasing intensity. Its core, a shimmering sphere of strange alloys and biotechnological interfaces, seemed to come alive with the hum of dormant power. The deeper mechanisms of the vault, untouched by time, engaged with a grace that belied their age. The first faint tremor of energy began to spread through the vault's complex network of conduits and chambers. The relic's activation wasn't an accident. It had been waiting for a moment of peril, a time when the galaxy would have forgotten humanity entirely, when their legacy would seem nothing more than a myth. And now, in the cold vacuum of space, with the Indarax preparing to fire its annihilating barrage, the signal broke free from its prison. It was a single powerful pulse of energy, a transmission so intense it reverberated through the entire planetary system. Back on the Indarax, Commander Vathos was still grappling with his unease. The signal had been so faint at first, an anomaly in the background radiation, but now it was unmistakable. His instincts, honed over years of ruthless combat and conquest, told him something was wrong. There was no mistaking it now. The signal wasn't a relic of the past, it was something alive, something powerful. "Captain, we're receiving strange data from Earth," Lieutenant Rin reported, her voice unusually tense. "The readings, they're escalating." Vathos' eyes hardened as he leaned over the console. The data was now unmistakable, a transmission of immense power, like nothing he had encountered in his decades of military service. This was no normal energy signature. It was structured, intelligent, purposeful. "Patch it through," Vathos commanded, his voice firm. The crew scrambled to comply, tapping into the raw data as it flowed into their systems. But the sheer intensity of the transmission was overwhelming. The monitors flickered, struggling to process the overwhelming signal. Vathos clenched his fists, his mind racing. "What's happening?" he demanded. It's like a command, an invitation," Rin said, her eyes wide with disbelief. "The signal is reaching out, like it's trying to communicate with us. But the energy it's producing is off the scale." Vathos's breath caught. This wasn't just a relic or artifact. It was something more. But what? Suddenly, the system jolted. The Indarax shook violently as the ship's gravity well reacted to the surge of energy. Vathos stumbled forward, gripping the console. Something was changing in the space around them, something in the fabric of reality itself. The air crackled with static, a sensation of being on the verge of something momentous, something that would break the laws of physics as they knew them. "Report!" Vathos barked. "We've lost control of some of the auxiliary systems," Rin shouted. "The ship is—" But she didn't finish her sentence. The entire starship seemed to pause, as if held in place by an invisible force. The crew scrambled, shouting, but their voices were drowned out by the low hum that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the ship. The energy was not just overwhelming the sensors, it was now in control. In the heart of the Indarax, something massive was unfolding. The walls of the ship's bridge began to ripple, the space around them warping as if the ship itself was being drawn into the signal's gravitational field. Vathos could feel it, something deep inside him, a primal instinct telling him that this was more than an attack, more than a surprise. It was as if the universe itself was rejecting their presence here, pushing them back, warning them. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the ship lurched forward, breaking free from the invisible grip. The gravity well dissipated, and the systems came back online, but something was different. The signal was gone. The pulse of energy that had shaken them to their core had vanished. "What the hell just happened?" Vathos muttered, still trying to process the chaos he had just witnessed. Rin, her hands trembling on the console, looked up wide-eyed. I don't know, Captain. But whatever that was, it's not over. The readings, they've changed. There's something out there. Something alive." Before Vathos could respond, an officer rushed into the bridge. His face was pale, his eyes wide with fear. "Sir, you need to see this." Vathos followed him to the observation deck, where a vast, shattered view of Earth lay before them. The planet, once nothing more than a ball of ruined stone and dust, had now begun to show signs of life. An energy field, faint at first, was expanding from the surface, growing at an exponential rate. The Indarax's massive weapons array was still locked onto the planet, but now the weaponry seemed almost irrelevant. In the wake of the signal, the very laws of space-time seemed to warp around Earth. For the first time in centuries, the planet was showing signs of sentient activity. But this was no ordinary resurrection. No, this was the reawakening of a dormant power, something that would challenge the very foundation of the Dominion's empire. In that moment, Commander Vathos understood. The humans had left behind a legacy, a weapon, a force that had survived the Dominion's purge, and now that force was returning. The galaxy had forgotten humanity, but humanity had not forgotten it. The signal, the power beneath Earth, was only the beginning. The Indarax's weapons were useless now. The galaxy was about to experience the resurgence of humanity's greatest secret. And with it, the Dominion's reign would be tested in ways it could never have imagined. The hum of the Indarax's engines felt strangely distant now. The ship, once a symbol of the Dominion's might, now seemed insignificant, like a tiny speck in the grand design of something far greater. For the first time, Commander Vathos questioned the invulnerability he had taken for granted his entire career. The Indarax, the Dominion's most powerful warship, was no longer the apex predator in this galaxy. It was a pawn, trapped in a game it couldn't comprehend. Vathos stood in silence, staring at the view of Earth as the planet's surface crackled with mysterious energy. The once dead world was now alive with an unnatural pulse, a steady, rhythmic expansion of force that seemed to stretch across the entire atmosphere. The Indarax's sensors now flickered erratically, as if fighting against some invisible interference, the data feeds twisting in a chaotic swirl. What had once been a dull, lifeless sphere of rock was transforming into something far more dangerous, something ancient. "Captain, the readings are beyond anything we've encountered," Lieutenant Rin said, her voice tense, her fingers frantically working to stabilize the data on her console. "The energy signatures are fluctuating at frequencies we don't even have names for. It's like the very fabric of space around Earth is bending. We don't know how to analyze this." Vathos clenched his jaw. He had been in countless battles, facing enemies with weaponry far beyond the capabilities of his people. But this was different. This was no conventional weapon or enemy force. This was something far more enigmatic, far more terrifying. And the Dominion had no playbook for it. As the ship hovered in orbit, the distortion around Earth grew, enveloping the planet in a shimmering, translucent field. It was as though the atmosphere itself was shifting, rippling with power that should not exist. The Indarax was now trapped at the edge of a cosmic event, its mission suspended in a moment of incomprehensible mystery. "What's happening on the surface?" Vathos demanded. "We're seeing flashes of energy, almost like a lightning storm, but—" "It's different," Rin replied. "The field is expanding outward, but it's not like anything we've ever seen. It's almost as if Earth is corresponding to the ship." Vathos knew then that this was no ordinary planetary phenomenon. This was deliberate. This was a response, a challenge, and the galaxy had no idea what it was up against. At that moment, the voice of the ship's AI, Seraph, cut through the tension in the bridge. "Captain, I've detected a sudden spike in gravitational anomalies near the planet's surface. I recommend an immediate retreat. The gravitational forces may be destabilizing. It is no longer safe to remain in orbit." Vathos ignored the warning, his mind consumed by the strange energy on the planet below. "No, we stay, we complete the mission." But his words felt hollow, even to him. Deep down, Vathos knew the truth. The mission no longer mattered. The very laws of nature were shifting beneath their feet, and the Indarax, mighty as it was now a spectator in a much larger game. Below, in the bowels of the vault, the relic continued to hum with increasing power. The signal had amplified exponentially, breaking free of its ancient containment. It had sent its message to the galaxy, a warning, a call, but it was also a promise. The human legacy was not just a tale of survival, it was a message of defiance. Humanity had not simply perished. They had left behind a force capable of reshaping the galaxy, and now that force was awakening. As the energy pulse reached its peak, something began to happen that no one, least of all the Dominion, could have anticipated. The energy field around Earth began to coalesce into a tangible shape. It was as if the planet itself had given birth to something new, something entirely alien, yet undeniably human. The atmosphere seemed to twist and fold, creating a vortex of light and shadow, a storm of energy that swirled around Earth like an ethereal cocoon. The Indarax's senses flared as the ship's AI struggled to keep up with the rapid changes. The gravitational anomalies grew stronger, warping the surrounding space. For a fleeting moment, Vathos saw something in the distance, a silhouette, growing larger with each passing second. It was massive, its outline obscured by the electromagnetic distortion, but there was no mistaking the shape. It was a ship, a warship unlike anything the Dominion had ever encountered. "Report!" Vathos shouted, his voice tense as he leaned over Rin's console, his eyes fixed on the growing shape in the distance. It's coming from Earth," Rin said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's massive, bigger than the Indarax. By orders of magnitude. But this ship, Captain, it's human." Vathos felt a chill run down his spine. The signal, the energy, the sudden appearance of a ship this size. It could only mean one thing. Humanity had left behind a weapon, and it was rising from the depths of Earth. The Indarax's sensors struggled to capture any meaningful data. The ship, if it could even be called that, was an enigma. Its surface shimmered with a strange, otherworldly texture, as though it were made from both organic and mechanical materials, a seamless fusion of the two. Its silhouette shifted and distorted, as if existing in multiple states at once, fluctuating between different dimensions of space. The ship began to move, slowly at first, then with increasing speed. It accelerated toward the Indarax, seemingly indifferent to the warship's weapons or defenses. The Indarax's weapon systems locked onto the approaching vessel, but Vathos knew it was futile. Whatever this ship was, it was beyond their capabilities. Beyond the Dominion's understanding. Suddenly, the air inside the Indarax seemed to hum with energy. The temperature in the bridge dropped sharply, and a strange weightlessness washed over the crew. Time seemed to bend, the ship's artificial gravity flickering in and out of existence. "Brace for impact," Vathos shouted. But there was no impact. Instead, the strange ship came to a halt, hovering just outside the Indarax's weapons range. Its surface rippled, and for a moment it seemed as though the ship was communicating with the Indarax, transmitting something directly into the warship's core systems. A message, perhaps, or a warning. And then, just as suddenly as it had, appeared The ship vanished, leaving the Indirax trembling in the void, surrounded by a disorienting silence. "Where did it go?" Vathos demanded. I don't know, Captain," Rin said, her voice shaking. "It's like it disappeared, but we can still feel it, like it's lingering, watching us." Vathos stood frozen, his mind racing. This was no longer about a simple conquest. No, this was something far beyond the Dominion's understanding. Something from Earth, humanity's last desperate stand, had just made its presence known. And now the galaxy would have to reckon with the consequences. The Indirax drifted in orbit, its once unshakable dominance now in question. "Commander." Vathos stood at the observation window, staring out at the empty void, his mind reeling. The human warship had vanished, but its presence lingered in the air, a heavy, unspoken threat. The Indirax, for the first time in its existence, felt small, insignificant against the vastness of what had just transpired. What kind of force could do this? What kind of weapon could erase all the Dominion's centuries of conquest with a single movement? "Captain, I'm picking up something on the far side of Earth." Lieutenant Rin's voice broke through Vathos's thoughts. "It's faint, but it's there. Another energy pulse, similar to the first one. It's not like anything we've ever seen before." Vathos turned sharply, his eyes narrowing. "Is it the ship?" "No," she replied, her fingers dancing across the console. "This energy signature, it's coming from the surface. I think it's coming from the ruins. It's almost like something's emerging from below." The thought sent a shiver down Vathos's spine. Below, in the abandoned depths of Earth's crust, lay a relic, something powerful enough to challenge the Dominion itself. Humanity had left behind something no one had dared to understand. The pieces were falling into place. But Vathos couldn't make sense of the bigger picture. The ship's AI, Seraph, suddenly cut in with a cold mechanical voice. "Captain, I have detected multiple gravity wells destabilizing across the planet's surface. Several points are converging near the Earth's equator. I recommend an immediate course change." Vathos's gaze turned toward the darkened horizon. The planet seemed to pulse, as though it were alive with energy, alive with something older than the galaxy itself. "Adjust our trajectory," he commanded, turning to Rin. "Get us closer. We need to understand what's happening down there." As the Indirax shifted in its orbit, the rumble of the ship's engines resonated through the hull, vibrating the walls like an echo of some ancient force. Below, the ground seemed to tear open in places. Deep fissures appeared across the ruins of human civilization, splitting the surface and unleashing torrents of energy into the atmosphere. At first it was subtle, a whisper in the winds, but soon it became a roar. The planet was breaking open. Vathos, still silent, watched as the energy began to coalesce into massive pillars of light, each one stretching from the shattered Earth toward the sky. The air around Earth shimmered, warping as though reality itself was bending to the will of something ancient. The Indirax moved closer, and the view grew more surreal. Cities that once had been vibrant now lay in ruins, yet the energy from beneath the planet's surface seemed to be resurrecting them. "How is this possible?" Rin whispered, her eyes wide with disbelief. "It's like the very soil is coming alive, but these buildings, these structures, they were here before the Dominion, long before us." Vathos could feel his heart pounding in his chest. These weren't just ruins. They were temples, fortresses, and beneath them, buried deep within the Earth, was the source of humanity's forgotten power. The gravity wells that had been detected were only the beginning. As the Indirax drew closer, something far larger emerged. From the surface, massive structures began to rise, tall spires, their surfaces glinting like obsidian. They seemed to be part machine, part living organism, each one pulsating with an eerie blue light. Rin stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the screen. These structures, they're not just ancient. They're being activated, some kind of defense system. Vathos's mind raced. A defense system? The Dominion had thought it eradicated all evidence of human civilization. This was a planet that had been left in ruin, its history all but erased from the stars. Yet now, it seemed humanity had built something far beyond their time, something that would give them the power to rise again. Before Vathos could respond, Seraph's voice interrupted once more. "Captain, I've detected a signal. It's being broadcast from one of the rising structures. The signal is encrypted, unlike any code in the Dominion's database." "Bring it up," Vathos ordered. On the display before him, a series of strange symbols flickered to life. The encryption was complex, far more advanced than anything the Dominion had ever encountered. It was almost organic. The symbols seemed to shift and change with every passing second, as if the code itself were alive, adapting to the ship's systems. Rin's voice was full of awe. "Captain, it's a message, but it's not in any language we know." The symbols flickered again, growing more intense, more purposeful. The message was clear. Humanity is returning. The words were not spoken. They were transmitted directly into the Indarax's systems, overwhelming the crew's comprehension for a moment. The ship's communication network struggled to adapt, but Vathos felt it, a presence, an ancient consciousness reaching across the stars. "We need to decode this," Vathos said, his voice barely above a whisper. But as the symbols continued to change, something unexpected happened. The structures on Earth began to glow brighter, their energy coalescing into a massive dome of light, encapsulating the entire planet. The light was almost blinding, like the sun itself had descended from the heavens to reclaim Earth. The energy resonated through the Indarax, rattling the ship to its core. The gravitational anomaly intensified, pulling at the very heart of the ship, threatening to tear it apart. "Captain, we're being pulled into the gravity well," Rin shouted. "It's too strong, we can't hold our position." Vathos gripped the console tightly, his mind working through 1,000 different scenarios. Earth had become a beacon of unimaginable power. The humans had left behind a weapon, no, a legacy, that was beyond the Dominion's reach. And now that legacy was awakening. The Indarax was caught in the gravitational pull, inching closer to the planet's surface with every passing second. The massive dome of energy surrounding Earth flickered again, and suddenly, Vathos felt a surge of energy wash over him. It wasn't just physical, it was mental. The ship's AI faltered for a moment, as if processing a flood of data it couldn't comprehend. And then, just as the Indarax was about to be swallowed by the planet's gravitational pull, the energy pulse, this time far more intense, ripped through the ship's systems. The lights flickered, the ship's engines screamed in protest, and for a moment everything went black. When the lights returned, everything had changed. The Indarax lurched violently as the gravitational field snapped back into place. For a moment, Vathos couldn't tell if the ship was still intact or if it had been torn apart. His head throbbed, and the disorienting pulse of energy still vibrated in his bones, as if the ship itself had been touched by some cosmic force far beyond its design. His breath came in ragged gasps, his fingers clutching the armrests of his command chair as he fought to regain control of his senses. "Report," he barked, his voice hoarse from the chaos. Rin was the first to respond, her face pale, her eyes wide with shock. "Captain, the ship, it's changed. We're no longer in the same position. The sensors, everything's offline. The gravity field, it's reversed somehow." The bridge was eerily silent, save for the soft hum of damaged consoles struggling to reboot. The vastness of space outside the viewport had warped. The stars no longer twinkled. They seemed to pulse in erratic rhythms, like distant flames flickering in a cosmic wind. The Indarax was no longer in orbit around Earth. It was caught in the gravitational anomaly that had been unleashed by the ancient weapon beneath the planet's surface. "We've been pulled into a dimensional rift," Seraph's calm voice suddenly echoed through the bridge, though it seemed out of place amid the chaos. The Indarax is now entangled in a localized fold in space-time. The gravitational anomalies surrounding Earth are expanding into a new field. Time and space are fluctuating in unpredictable patterns. Vathos struggled to make sense of the AI's words. The Indarax, the pride of the Dominion, was now caught in some kind of cosmic tear, where the rules of physics no longer applied. It was as if the ship had entered a pocket of reality, where time itself was bending, where the galaxy outside seemed to shift and distort with every passing second. His fingers tightened around the console, trying to steady himself in the midst of this new alien reality. "Get the sensors back online," Vathos ordered. "Now we need to understand what just happened. How far have we drifted?" Rin worked quickly, her hands moving in fluid precision across the damaged console. She muttered to herself, typing furiously. Then, after a long pause, she looked up. "Captain, it's impossible. We're still in the same location, but everything around us is different. The stars, there's something wrong with the constellations. They've shifted." Vathos's eyes narrowed. "So we haven't moved at all?" "No," Rin said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We've entered another dimension, a mirror of our own. The universe, it's not the same here. The fabric of space has twisted, warped. We're still in the same position relative to Earth, but it's as though the galaxy around us has been reshaped." As she spoke, Vathos could feel it. The Indarax's systems were glitching. Things were slipping through cracks in space and time. The fabric of reality around them was no longer stable, like a torn piece of cloth flapping in the wind. The ship groaned, its engines struggling to adapt to the new forces acting on them. The walls flickered between moments of reality and something darker, the corridors casting shadows that shouldn't have existed. Suddenly a low, resonating hum filled the air, deep and throbbing like the heartbeat of some unseen creature. The energy outside the ship surged again, brighter this time, stronger. Vathos staggered to his feet, his instincts screaming. Something was coming. "Captain," Seraph's voice cut through the tension. "A ship is approaching. No, it's more than a ship. The object is of unknown origin, and it's moving toward us at high velocity. It's using similar energy signatures to those we detected, earlier originating from Earth. But this is no ordinary vessel. This is a warship, and it's unlike anything we've ever seen." Vathos's breath caught in his throat. Another ship. The human warship that had vanished moments ago had left a mark on his mind, an unsettling reminder of the power that lay dormant on Earth. Now something else was coming, and it was heading straight for them. "Raise shields," Vathos barked. "Activate. Weapons systems, prepare for combat." But it was too late. The alien warship appeared in an instant, a blur of shimmering energy, flickering in and out of existence. It seemed to move through space and time like a shadow, bending the very light around it. The Indarax's sensors couldn't lock onto the vessel's trajectory, as though it existed simultaneously in multiple places at once. It was a ghost, an entity that defied logic, a force that wasn't bound by the same rules that governed the Dominion's warships. For a moment, everything went still. The Indarax was caught in the gaze of the strange warship. No weapons were fired, no words spoken, just an overwhelming sense of waiting, as if time had paused, as if the universe had stopped, holding its breath for the moment of reckoning. Then, the air around the Indarax vibrated with an intensity that could only be described as a shockwave, only it wasn't physical. It was mental. The ship's systems flared to life as the warship's power seemed to envelop them, flooding the Indarax with an energy that was both foreign and familiar. Vathos gripped his console, his mind filled with a strange, distant memory. It was as though the warship's arrival triggered something deep within the Indarax. The AI Seraph seemed to flicker, its voice breaking in fragmented bursts. "Captain, the ship, the message, it's awakening." The words hit Vathos like a hammer. "What message?" Seraph struggled to respond, its voice crackling. "The human legacy, the energy, the warship, it's calling, it's—" Before Seraph could finish, the warship before them fired, not with weapons, but with something far more devastating. A beam of pure condensed energy shot toward the Indarax, not from a traditional cannon, but from a ripple in space itself. It pierced the fabric of reality, cutting through the very molecules of the Indarax's hull like a blade through paper. The ship buckled, and Vathos felt the floor beneath him give way. The shields failed with a single deafening screech, and the lights dimmed to a faint glow. For a heartbeat, the ship was suspended in a moment of complete, terrifying silence. And then, the warship spoke, not through sound, but through the ship's core systems, flooding Vathos's mind with an alien ancient voice, a command, a declaration. "You are not welcome here." The words echoed through the Indarax's systems, not as a simple message but as a wave of raw power, a mental assault that rattled every crew member to their core. Vathos's mind swirled in chaos, and, for a moment, he wondered if he was losing his grip on reality itself. The voice was ancient, its tone filled with an almost divine authority. It was as if the very fabric of space had spoken to them, no, commanded them. "You are not welcome here." There are. Warship's presence intensified. The hull of the Indarax groaned under the pressure of the energy surging through its systems, as though the ship itself was being pulled in different directions, caught between dimensions. The ship's lights flickered wildly, and alarms blared. From every corner of the bridge, Seraph, once so sure and logical, now sounded panicked, its voice warbling with distortion. "Captain, the entity, it's interfacing with the ship. Our systems, our weapons, they're becoming inert. I cannot override the control." Vathos could feel the energy surging through the ship, feel the mental invasion washing over him, as if someone, was trying to erase the Dominion's presence from existence, rewriting history with the force of its will. His vision blurred, his mind buckling under the weight of something far older, far more powerful than anything the Dominion had ever encountered. He gritted his teeth, trying to focus. "Rin," he shouted, his voice hoarse. "What's happening?" "But—" She didn't answer. Instead, she looked back at him, her face pale, her eyes wide with fear. "The ship. Captain, it's like it's waking up. I don't know what this is, but it's not a warship. It's alive. It's been waiting for something. For us." And that was when Vathos understood. The warship wasn't just an enemy force, it was the manifestation of the legacy the humans had left behind. It was theirs. His heart pounded as the truth of it all crashed over him. Earth wasn't just a forgotten world, lost to time. It was the cradle of something vast, something the Dominion had no comprehension of. The humans had built something more than weapons, more than ships. They had constructed an entire reality that defied the rules of space and time. It was their ultimate defense, hidden away for millennia, waiting for the day when their enemies would return to erase their legacy. And now that day had come. He turned toward the viewport, his gaze locked on the alien warship. Its shimmering surface twisted in impossible ways, bending light and space like a living organism. It was vast, larger than any ship in the Dominion's fleet. And yet it wasn't just a ship. It was part of a system that had been dormant, waiting. The very energy that had erupted from Earth was not an explosion of power. It was a signal, calling forth a response. "They are here." "Get us out of here," Vathos muttered, shaking his head. "We need to move. Now." But the order was met with silence. The Indarax was stuck, its engines frozen in place, its systems overridden by an external force too powerful to comprehend. The warship loomed closer, its energy signature growing stronger, more suffocating. Vathos's hand tightened into a fist. The humans hadn't just been survivors, they had built something that could bend reality itself. The warship responded to the ship's defiance. With a sound that was not of this universe, the vessel shifted. It wasn't a smooth transition, not like any form of FTL travel that the Dominion had ever perfected. No, this was different. The warship flickered, distorting space itself as it jumped across dimensions, moving faster than thought, and for a moment the Indarax was enveloped in a field of impossibility. It was as though the very laws of physics had unraveled, leaving Vathos in a void where time and space did not exist, and then with a resounding crash, the warship's presence was everywhere. It surrounded the Indarax not just physically, but mentally, reaching into the very minds of the crew. The crew members were all frozen in place, paralyzed by a sensation far worse than fear, an overwhelming sense of insignificance. Their thoughts turned to whispers, fleeting fragments of memories, as if the warship's mere presence was draining their consciousness. Vathos could feel it too. The weight of a forgotten past pressing down on his mind. He saw flashes of images of distant worlds, strange alien cities, lifeless, desolate landscapes, and most disturbing of all, the ruins of Earth. They were not just ruins, they were a monument to something else. Something that had been here long before the Dominion, long before the galaxy was born. A human legacy, but it was not just a legacy of power. It was a warning. Vathos's mind raced, trying to piece the puzzle together. The warship was no ordinary vessel. It was a sentience, an extension of the humans' will. The humans had left behind not just weapons, but a message. The galaxy had been shaped by those who forgot their past, who wiped away civilizations to create their own. But the humans had ensured that their legacy would never be erased. They had created something that would endure, something that would fight back against those who would seek to erase them. And now, the Dominion had made their mistake. The warship, this living relic of humanity's forgotten past, had awoken. And it was not just protecting Earth, it was protecting humanity itself against the galaxy's most powerful empire. The warship's energy surged again, as if in response to his thoughts. Vathos's eyes widened in realization. The ship, this force, was not just protecting Earth, it was rewriting history itself, reconstructing the past to ensure that the Dominion and all those who sought to conquer would never succeed. Vathos could feel the pull of the warship, the gravity of its presence. And with it came the crushing certainty that this was only the beginning. The Dominion had thought they were invincible, unstoppable, but they had never understood the true power of humanity's legacy. This warship, and everything that came with it, was not just a weapon. It was a rebirth. As the warship's presence engulfed them, Vathos heard Seraph's final message before the ship's systems went dark. The legacy is alive, Captain, and it will not be erased. The Indarax stood at the precipice of a new era. Humanity had endured. Its legacy was no longer a forgotten story. It was a force, a presence that would shape the galaxy for centuries to come. The Dominion had made its move, but now, the universe would remember the humans as they had always been meant to be remembered. And from the ruins of Earth, the message rang clear across the stars. Humanity has returned. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and comment below. Let us know what you think about the legacy of humanity in the galaxy. Would you want to face a force like this? Or maybe you have your own ideas for a sci-fi epic. Share them with us. The journey has just begun.